Hello, internet friends. My name is Bay. Welcome back to the Shadowlands Alpha First Pass, First Impressions Coverage. This is the overall Paladin video. Footage in the background, of course. The last spec that I ended the Paladin junket on here in the Alpha. So it's the Holy Paladin footage. Slapping away at some Zambles, Zomboes, Walking Dead, whatever. We're in the Necrotic Wake dungeon. And it's the whole thing, basically. There's a moment in time, spoiler alert, on the last boss where I do something that has probably caught many offensive paladins with their pants down. But of course, you'll get to that when the footage gets to that. If you want the actual video, with comms, just the dungeon cut itself, with not me talking over it, but me with my guests that you see in the dungeon, then of course that is linked down below in the video description box, as long with everything else in all the testing so far, all coagulated together in one place on the channel guide for all the different classes and specs therein. Of course, also down there, you will find a link to subscribe to this YouTube channel. If you are enjoying the coverage overall so far, if you are keeping up with all the different classes and specs, even the ones that you're not even playing, I appreciate all of the comments and back and forth, even some of the less positive ones. But if you want to subscribe to the YouTube channel here, try and make a huge push with this coverage. Of course, there's a whole lot more to come to actually land over the 100,000 subscriber mark here on YouTube. So maybe they'll take notice of my channel. I'll get one of those play buttons and I'll feel like, oh, this wasn't for nothing. Also, the like buttons are there, of course. It's been used a couple of times, maybe, to say you dislike what I'm talking about and what I'm showing off, which is not the whole point of the like and dislike button. If you don't like the changes to the classes, disliking my videos doesn't do anything, because I can't really do anything about it. I'm just hopefully, garnishing feedback and spreading it around, but to each their own, I suppose. Now, the overall Paladin, I've made this point rather clear in my live streams, what I was testing. I talked about this a lot in my own personal Discord. Was talking to a couple of the Paladins in my guild, even just the other day, about this. I think overall, I've felt the most positive towards a overall class for the changes that have happened from BFA to Shadowlands that have been put forward so far, right? It's obviously alpha, anything can change. But I think outside of a few sticky points, which are far fewer than, say, Warlock or Mage, for example, or obviously Enhancement Shaman, which is just a complete what is going on with that spec right now. Overall, Paladin feels like it has the most hooks put in the almost right places across the entirety of the class. Each individual spec, of course, a whole bunch of different little things that are coming in and out there, but we'll wait and see how that all pieces together when more of the systems for Shadowlands get presented to us. But there are things that people have been asking for a very long time that have come back. Blessing of Sacrifice for Retribution Paladins again. You can do Sacrifice with Shield of Vengeance up to forcibly pop your shield for a little bit extra damage, say during Wings or something like that. But that brings up the whole, there's no Divine Protection on Ret, so it's still, you only have one Absorb, kind of. But at the same time, you also have ways to heal yourself. You have Lay on Hands. You have an immunity bubble. So that's the tough part about balancing the survivability of certain specs, right? But then Holy Paladin is like the same thing. It's like, it's even closer to Retribution Paladin now in how they do damage, because they can actually spend their holy power they build from healing offensively, just like how Ret builds and spends holy power offensively, because you can use on Holy Paladin. You can see here a couple different times in the footage where I'm just going in, dropping big cooldowns and just slapping things away with the Holy Pimp Hand, basically, because there's no animation for Shield of the Righteous if you're using a two-hander. Like if you have your Tears Ham. If you have Tears Ham, why wasn't that an actual artifact skin where the entire hammer was just a giant ham hawk? We gotta find a picture of that somewhere. It has to exist. But if you have your legendary artifact transmogged, which turns your sword and board normally into a big old two-handed mace, there's no animation that makes anything render for a shield when you Shield of the Righteous. There's like a shield that pops up in front of you to denote that you're doing that like frontal cone AoE, but you just backhand them with your left hand. Maybe you want that. I don't know. I think it looks pretty funny. But all the paladins then have something that feels together across the board. Now, Rhett's not going to really use SOTR at all. I think there was some preliminary math that are worried about the fact that Divine Storm has a target cap of 5, but obviously hits pretty hard. You have things like Empyrean Power. You have Consecration returning, but Consecration doesn't have an AoE cap. It hits all targets. There is... SOTR does very little holy damage, but it has no target cap, just as a positional requirement there. What's weird, I think in chat yesterday, it was brought to my attention that the Retribution Paladin won't be, you know, it won't be replacing Glitterstorm for weapon swapping to SOTR unless you're AoEing 14 or more mobs. And then even then, I refuted that information with, that doesn't make any sense to me, because even if you do that and switch to SOTR and lock yourself to the 1.5 second weapon swap window, because you need a shield equipped to be able to actually hit Shield of the Righteous, you do little bits of damage to all of those mobs instead of hitting 5 targets with each Glitter Storm really hard. So I don't know what the point of that would be. It's essentially turning your big AoE ability that hits multiple targets at a time into a very weak one blast kind of blizzard effect, because there's no target caps involved in that spell either. So that one I'm not sure. But auras are obviously a big deal for all the paladins. It's a little bit more of a deal for Holy because they get to interact with their auras. And now, admittedly, I don't think I even popped AM but once in this entire dungeon because it never really felt like I needed to. I could have, you know, Aura Mastery Crusader Aura will be running past some mobs on my own sometimes, but there's really... Aura Mastery with Retribution Aura is weird, and Aura Mastery with Devo is just a damage reduction. And the only time I should have probably used that more often or more aggressively was on the last boss, for sure. Or there's some AoE-ish times on the second boss, yeah, that I could have used it on. But on the third boss, I try to get in there and pop all my offensive cooldowns to help do damage, as you normally try to when you are playing a Holy Paladin, because you do have that sort of trade-off. Either you focus a lot on DPS or focus a lot on healing. I didn't try Avenging Crusader in this build, which obviously turns your Sanctified Wrath, Avenging Wrath sort of wings window into more of a you do damage to heal, but it's obviously only going to be on your Judgment and Crusader strikes. It doesn't actually amplify your damage you deal. It's not going to make you do more Consecration damage or Shield of the Righteous damage or Holy Shock damage. So that was why I went with the build that you currently see in the background there, trying to see what damage looks like. In the previous video, the actual Holy Paladin video, there is the logs linked. So if you want to go grab those and just sort of look at what the damage is going on. Some parts, it looks like I was doing basically tank DPS, which is pretty neato. It's not, you know, oh my god, it's so big. But tank DPS is obviously not something to scoff at, because tanks do... sometimes about when it's not Twilight Devastation, which is all going away. About probably, what, 60-ish% of an actual DPS sometimes, depending on if it's AoE or not. Tanks have not as ridiculous AoE caps on certain abilities, so they don't have damage fall off when hitting multiple targets. But we'll get to that more, because different tanks kind of have a little bit of that here and there. But again, it's not going to be a thing that's like DPS, like I-Beam for Havoc, for example, which does main damage to one target and then well-reduced damage with the new square root math. Same thing with Lake of Ashes, for example, which I want to run Ret, where it does full damage to one target and then reduced to everything else. So there's something there to be looking forward to, where you can have that trade-off of play styles as a more offensive healer. And that's something that Blizzard is slowly creeping into the overall system with healers, is how you do damage and when you can do damage. And healers having ability to do AoE damage, especially Holy in this case, as you see right in the background there, is the discussion came up about being able to compete with Restoration Druids. And their ability to just dot things up and then go cat form and dot things up. And right now, Holy Paladin can definitely do a lot of single target burst damage. But they really have no Consecration. They can pull up down, and what does it do? Just kind of tickles the ground for a little bit. Like, it really doesn't do a whole lot. But the new way it works now, and the potential to, even on progression, run things like Ret Aura if you don't need to run Devo Aura, if you're like a prop Paladin in the group. And get extra wings uptime. I think the awakening change might be interesting with divine purpose, because you might just flow into wings a lot for either damage or for healing reactionary stuff. There's lots of hooks. I'm looking through my notes right now. There are so many different changes, say for like prop paladin, for example, as well. And I'm just going through here, like Blessed Hammer has the damage reduction reworked to be more of that, like that short form but recastable absorb shield, that offensive absorb shield. Redoubt now is like this almost like the, what is it called? I gotta pull up the talent right now, because on Retribution Paladin you have Righteous Verdict, right? Like the Righteous Verdict window, which was your, it was a legendary cape, I want to say, from Legion, where you deal a Templar's Verdict, gives you more damage on the next Templar's Verdict for the next 6 seconds. Redoubt now in the same place for protection is almost the same kind of thing, like hitting SOTR as fast as possible and continuing to rotate in an SOTR window gives you tank stats, right? Gives you stacking strength, gives you stacking stamina, and it's kind of similar to that play style as it would be to build and spend and weave Templar's Verdicts back to back to back to back to back, which again, because every single Paladin also has the level 40s, their talents at level 40, Divine Purpose, Holy Avenger, and Seraphim, which all interact with how they play their rotation, how they spend Holy Power, and how they interact with Holy Power builders and spenders. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for all 3 specs. And I think there's really a lot of good just things there. The first Avenger rework for Prop Paladin, having the big shield bounces that give you the shield back for AoE tanking, combined with Blessed Hammer, gives you a lot of, it's chip absorbs, but at the same time, that's a lot of damage smoothing. And that's one of the problems that people have talked about with Prop Paladin for a long time, is that you got SOTR up and you're in Consecration, you're good. Which before was just, you have SOTR up, you're good, SOTR is down, you're dead. Now you should be able to permanently stand in your Consecrate due to the fact that it lasts for 12 seconds and its cooldown is 6 or less based on your haste for Prop Paladin. So moving in your Consecration is obviously going to be important. And I think it does put a lot of power into Consecrated Ground because it makes your Consecration a little bigger. But then the new Hand of the Protector interacting with Word of Glory is just real big. So depending on how you want to spend your Holy Power as a tank is also a big deal. Very Paladin-esque. But there are moments, I think, in builds you can make for certain situations now with Prot where you can have more smoother damage intake. And with the way the Holy Power works, it's very possible that you should never, ever not have SOTR up almost all the time. So it having charges in the current model in BFA and how you use those charges, especially like say for Inquisition, for example, or not Inquisition, Seraphim rather. When you Seraphim, you use up your charges. Now, of course, you use like the Bastion talent to give yourself charges all of a sudden right afterwards. And that's kind of neat. But I wonder if it'll just be smoother to go back to a rotation that rewards you for hitting the right buttons at the right times and keeping your SOTR up. And of course, keeping out your Consecration when you need to, when you move. And of course, at least every 6 seconds, you're refreshing it to make sure you're in that consecrated area. I think there's lots of pros there compared to the systems that kind of right now feel a little bit more, I guess, looser or weaker, flimsier is the right word maybe. But I had a blast playing Paladin. I've played it quite a bunch in the past. I did the Mage Tower for Retribution Paladin really early on in Legion. I did all of the challenge modes back at Mists of Pandaria as Ret. I've done some tanking, done some healing here and there. Not my cup of tea specifically. I enjoyed the Retribution Paladin playstyle more so. And there's other things coming back that are like weird. Sense Undead and Turn Evil, sure. Turn Evil not working on anything that everything that it should, like lore-wise. The biggest one is that Demon Metamorphosis from Demon Hunters doesn't count as a demon. I have here on the notes. Does not work on Demon Hunter and Metamorphosis, which states you turn into a hellish demon or for vengeance take on a demonic form, but it works on Death Knights and Lichborn. So question mark on that one. That one's a little bit weird. Additionally, it does make things run super freaking far away from you forever almost. It's almost hilarious how far things will run away from you. And of course, they will pull other things. You can like make them run into corners or walls based on your positioning because they always run away from the paladin when you cast it on them. So it's strange. It's a little bit extra flavor maybe, but at the same time, losing Kings and Wisdom, doesn't really gotta shed a tear over Kings and Wisdom. They were somewhat flavorful, but they were so weak compared to their older versions, I suppose. And then Blessing of Might, of course, didn't last very long in Legion. There was really nothing there to, I think, miss, just because it was a problematic state of what Blessing of Might did back in the day, with the state of how you would only put it on your, your fire mages or your hunters for high health, and then you would be able to move it over to your warriors at low health. But then they fixed that by you can put it on, but you can't remove Blessing of Might during combat. It's just, why even make a system like that that's so, which is coming back in a way with focused magic on mages where they can share the crit in the battle, the whole dark intent thing again. Those systems are just very strange in World of Warcraft now, and I don't know if they belong. They're flavorful to a degree, but I think when it becomes that specifically targetable ability power based, you get into the whole, I'll give you 1,000 gold if you give me, might tonight. No, I'll give you 5,000 gold if you give me might tonight. Blah, 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 blah. It's just ick. It's just ick. But Wake of Ashes being baseline for Ret feels good. Doesn't have 5 holy power generating. It generates only 3, but it deals more damage now. And what else do I got here? The Blade of Justice change for Retribution now. Well, not Blade of Justice specifically. It's the Art of War interaction with Blade of Justice. Art of War currently, I was actually having a discussion with a former long-time Paladin player, now currently playing Warlock, has been for quite a long time, has been talking about how Art of War is different in that it's no longer an RPPM system anymore. So that means you can get procs back to back to back to back to back, potentially. It may smooth out the rotation because it can be perpetual throughout every moment-to-moment part of your gameplay. It also means that attacking faster, talents like Zeal should be working. And again, auto attacks you gain extra from Wind Fury Totem should also help proc Art of War, which I think was the whole purpose of why they made that change in the first place. So it's good. Like, it looks like there are some good tweaks coming. And there are, of course, things you got to realize that are going to go away. The Word of Glory talent that Ret can take is really strong right now in BFA. That is gone in Shadowlands. Word of Glory is going to be very strong for Holy Paladin due to the fact that the amount of holy power they can generate with how they can directly heal their beacon targets or their beacon of virtue targets. Or they have, of course, Holy Avenger as well. And they have Divine Purpose, which works on their... double check here. Divine Purpose for Holy Paladin was any holy power abilities have a chance to give you your next holy power ability for free and deal 20% increased damage or healing. That's how it works for all of them. It no longer is on only the Holy Shock interaction. So you'll be able to Word of Glory, which is the strongest heal for Holy Paladin. Once it hooks up to Mastery, right now it doesn't work with Mastery. And then drop off another one, or go from a Light of Dawn into a Word of Glory, or go from Light of Dawn to a Light of Dawn. And those, of course, like I said earlier, all sync with Awakening. That's how Awakening procs now, off of Word of Glory and Light of Dawn. There's just these nice little hooks that help, and then things have to be removed to make way for other things. Ret Pally, going back on the whole Word of Glory for Ret, it's weaker. You wanted Sacrifice back, and you got Sacrifice back. But I think it almost looks like when Blizzard is designing these specs, I know they probably don't do this, but it kind of feels like you're designing your army sheet in Warhammer, Fantasy or 40K. And you only have so many points you can use per spec. And utility points probably cost the most. So when they wanted to add back in Blessing of Sacrifice and the synergies it has there, on top of things, like you can off heal, and you still have of course have the same sort of hooks with Selfless Healer and things of that nature. You also have a new talent for Ret called Healing Hands, where you can get huge cooldown reduction on Lay of Hands at the right time. That they had to remove something else, right? So they had to remove the power that Word of Glory had to make it a baseline across all 3 Paladins. And then you lost Wisdom and Kings, but then you gained back Sacrifice. They had to move their point values around. It almost thinks that that's how it looks from the outside. I'm not saying that's how it actually works. I have no idea. But there's a lot of really neat stuff. Let me scroll back through here again. There's weird stuff too. Like the Aura Mastery stuff with the Holy Paladin. I don't know how it's going to work with Retribution. Are they really going to have 35 seconds of Avenging Crusader? Or 30 to 35 seconds of Avenging Crusader? Or like 35 seconds of Sanctified Wrath, Avenging Wrath? How is that going to work with if people die? Do they get even more time on the free wings? Is that almost making it so that you have to sort of snipe changing your auras, which have a global cooldown, to switch between them when you know someone is going to die? There's a bit of a skill cap thing you could argue in there, but at the same time, is that really the gameplay intention? So there are still warts, right? And unknown things, which is why Retribution Aura, I think, is the one that I've come up most of the time in these comments the past couple of days about being the weirdest one so far. There was a little bit of complaints that I saw about Heart of the Crusader, your passive movement speed while mounted going away across the Paladin and now only being tied to the aura. But now the aura affects the entire group you're with. And then, well, why isn't Aura Mastery a thing for all Paladins, not just Holy? But that would maybe cause too much power creep in Paladin overall. So there has to be like there's a balancing point there for sure. How the Holy Paladin's going to heal. Everything was changed. I went over all that in the previous video, of course. A lot of their healing values from spells have been moved around. Mostly notably, of course, that Holy Shock copped a 50% spell power reduction. It's mostly a catalyst to give Infusion of Lights now for either really fast flash of lights or really big holy lights. So it's no longer just the spell you cast all the time, which is a soft nerf to Glimmer, even if Glimmer came back. So there's all these, maybe it'll work out. We don't know yet. Depends on how legendaries come into play. Depends on how you're going to see artifacts come into play. I guess not artifacts, the artifact type system with soul binds and conduits. There's that one. So we're not sure yet, but I think I felt the best about the direction these three specs were going in compared to, say, like more recently, Warlock. And then before that, Demon Hunter. Because there are still so many things when I played through those two classes and those 5 specs where I was like, Havoc got, I think, overly nerfed. Vengeance got some nice things, but Spirit Bomb still exists and it might be problematic still yet again. And the overall rotation is still that you don't really care about Fury. You only care about your little lesser soul fragments. So, and then of course, I'm not going to go into the Warlock stuff. You can go watch all 4 of those videos if you like. There's just so many parts of the Warlock kits that are just, 6-second pet summons. Need I say more? But let me know what you think in the comments down below overall about the Paladin changes, the Paladin class in general. If you have good things to say about it or bad things to say about it, then let me know, because I'm going to be absorbing all this stuff. And then when we move forward to like mid-June, coming up in about a month, that I'll be able to help integrate a lot of this feedback into the pain point hot topics that I'm going to be able to submit to Blizzard, trying to distill down just the biggest warts, pain points, wants, asks, suggestions, to not overload with asking for everything under the sun. But my name's been Bay. Thank you very much for listening and hanging out and following along with all the coverage so far. If you haven't subscribed to this channel yet, I've got a lot more coverage on the way. Like the videos you like, dislike the ones you don't because of me, not because of what I'm talking to you about. Or just, forget about it. I don't know what happens on YouTube, but the like button is definitely the best way to tell the YouTube algorithm that, hey, this guy's coverage is really good. Maybe more WoW players that are looking for coverage should see this, and it should show this to more of them. And then trying to hit 100,000 subs this year on YouTube is a big personal goal. But again, my name's been Bay. Thank you very much for listening and hanging out. We do have Warrior coverage coming up next, followed by Hunter, and then we wrap up with Priest.